Okay, so you know how it is sometimes you get this, like, itch you just gotta scratch.
Yeah.
It's like this thing you can't quite shake.
I know that feeling for sure.
It's that what's behind the curtain thing, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And nowhere is that truer than with UFOs.
Right. Absolutely.
Government secrets, the unknown, it's just like catnip for the curiosity.
It is, and it should be.
Because it's exciting,
Yeah.
and it makes you think. Yeah.
Right.
It makes you wonder, what if?
Yeah, totally.
So that's the vibe for our deep dive today.
Yeah, we're diving deep into some of that today.
We're going way back to 1948.
Yeah, 1948.
To the very beginning of the official UFO investigations in the U.S.
Yep, the very start.
Project Sign.
Project Sign.
This wasn't just a quick look. See, this was like the Air Force saying, all right,
Yeah.
we got to figure this thing out.
Exactly. They were taking it seriously.
This was a top secret endeavor to try and understand these
Unidentified aerial phenomena.
unidentified aerial phenomena.
Yeah.
That's right. You got to be official about it.
UAP. We can say UAP.
There we go.
It's shorter.
Nice and short.
Yeah.
But to really get into the mindset,
Right.
we got to think about 1948 for a second, right?
Yes. Picture it.
World War II, it's over.
Still fresh, though.
But things are still really tense, right?
Very much so, yeah.
The Cold War is heating up.
It's a whole new kind of fear.
And into all of this
Yeah.
come these reports.
These reports start coming in
They start coming in from everywhere.
from everywhere, and they're not just like,
Yeah.
oh, I saw a light in the sky.
Right. This isn't like some fuzzy picture from your uncle's
No.
disposable camera, right?
These are detailed accounts.
We're talking pilots.
Yes, pilots, military personnel.
People you'd think.
Yeah, credible witnesses.
You'd think would know what they're looking at.
Exactly right.
And they're all saying.
They're all describing these objects
Yeah.
that just don't fit
Things that don't make sense.
with anything that was known at the time, right?
So what I'm hearing is the Air Force wasn't dealing with some fringe thing, right?
No, not at all. This was,
a legitimate concern.
oh, very much so. Yeah,
Yeah.
this was something they had to address.
So they launched Project Sign,
Right.
and their mission was to figure this stuff out.
Analyze these reports, collect data, try and figure out what the nature of these objects was.
That's a pretty big task.
It is a huge undertaking.
So walk me through it. What was their initial approach? Were they thinking little green men from the get-go? Or were they more like, well, this is probably just a bunch of explainable stuff?
I think it's safe to say that initially there was a strong tendency to look for conventional explanation.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
You start with the simplest explanation.
Right. Occam's razor.
Exactly.
So they're trying to debunk these sightings, right?
Yeah, could it be a misidentified airplane?
Right.
Weather balloons acting funny, atmospheric effects, things like that?
So trying to rule out the ordinary first
Precisely.
makes sense, but like we were talking about, these reports are getting pretty out there.
Yeah, they were.
So what were people seeing that made Project Sign think, this might be more than just a weather balloon?
Well, this is where it really starts to get interesting, because as Project Sign went deeper into these reports, the descriptions of these objects, they just became harder and harder to explain with known technology.
Like harder how?
Well, for example, people were reporting silent aircraft. Silent, no engine noise, often triangular in shape.
Triangular. Okay, now that's not something you see every day.
Not in 1948, no.
Right.
And then there were these reports of metallic discs.
Like flying saucers.
Yeah, classic flying saucers.
Oh,
Executing these impossible maneuvers, things that just shouldn't have been possible based on what they knew about aviation at the time.
so like what kind of maneuvers are we talking about?
We're talking about incredible speeds, like instantaneous acceleration,
Whoa.
sudden changes in direction, like 90-degree turns at high-speed things that would have turned a human pilot into jelly.
Yeah, I think I'd throw up.
Yeah, it would be a bad time.
So these weren't just like blurry lights in the distance?
No, these were often close-range observations by trained observers, people who knew what they were looking at.
So now we're getting to the heart of it, the cover-up.
The big question.
If these things weren't ours, and they weren't natural phenomena, well then what were they?
Exactly.
So for people who believe in the Project Sign cover-up, what's their main argument?
Well, the core argument is that Project Sign actually did find evidence
Oh.
that pointed to extraterrestrial visitation.
They found proof.
Well, that's what the proponents of this theory say.
Okay.
They say the team analyzed physical traces, although exactly what those were is debated,
Right, of course.
and that they documented technologies that seemed way beyond our capabilities at the time.
Like alien tech?
Yeah, potentially alien tech.
Wow.
And they even interviewed witnesses who claimed to have had direct encounters
Face-to-face?
face-to-face with these beings.
Okay, that's getting pretty wild.
It is wild stuff.
But the idea is that these findings were so disruptive,
Yeah, so mind-blowing.
so world-shattering, that the government just decided, nope, we can't let this out.
Bury it.
Bury it.
Exactly.
And that's where this estimate of the situation document comes in, right?
Yes, the
Right.
estimate of the situation.
This is like the holy grail for a lot of UFO researchers.
It is. It's legendary.
So what was it supposed to be?
Well, supposedly, it was a report put together by some members of Project Sign,
Okay,
who, after looking at all the evidence,
right.
concluded that at least some of the UFOs they were looking at
Yeah.
were probably extraterrestrial,
Wow.
that they were alien spacecraft.
They straight up said that
That's what's claimed, yeah,
in an official report.
in an official report.
That's huge.
It is, and the claim is that this report was so explosive
Right.
that it was immediately classified and shelved, never to see the light of day.
And never officially acknowledged.
Nope.
So for a lot of people who believe in the cover-up, the very existence and suppression of this document
Is the smoking gun?
is the proof.
Yeah, it's the ultimate proof.
Okay, so let's say Project Sign was on the verge of revealing all of this.
Right.
Then why the sudden switch to Project Grudge?
Yeah. Why the change?
What was the official line, and how does that fit into the cover-up theory?
Okay, so officially, Project Sign was shut down in early 1949,
Right,
and Project Grudge took its place.
right.
And the reason they gave was lack of concrete scientific evidence to back up the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
So no aliens, basically.
No aliens, basically.
Okay.
And Project Grudge, they took a much more dismissive stance.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they attributed most sightings to things like misidentified stars,
Oh, okay.
psychological issues, hoaxes, that kind of thing.
So basically they said everyone's just seeing things.
Pretty much, yeah.
But of course the cover-up folks see this whole transition very differently.
Oh, yeah, they do.
What's their take?
They say it wasn't a genuine reassessment of the data,
Uh-huh.
but a deliberate attempt to discredit Project Science findings.
The earlier findings.
Yeah, the earlier findings. And to bury the whole extraterrestrial possibility.
So basically a PR move.
Yeah, a calculated move to regain control of the narrative and reassure the public.
Because, you know, imagine the public freaking out.
Oh, yeah, total panic.
So it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy, almost like the shift in the official stance is itself part of the cover-up.
Exactly. It feeds into the conspiracy.
Which is pretty clever, actually, when you think about it.
It is a clever strategy if that's what they were doing.
Now we got to think about the context, right?
Yes, context is everything.
The late 1940s,
Post-war world.
it was a tense time globally.
Very tense.
The Cold War was just getting started.
New anxiety.
A whole new kind of fear.
The nuclear age had begun.
Yeah, the threat of annihilation.
The stakes were so high.
So how might that have played into this alleged secrecy around Project Sign?
Well, imagine you're the government.
Okay,
You're already dealing with a world on edge.
right. Everyone's scared
And then you find out that we're not alone.
that aliens are real.
That there are these incredibly advanced beings out there.
Who might be hostile.
Who knows what their intentions are?
That would be terrifying.
It would be.
So the argument is that the government was afraid that revealing this truth,
Would just push everyone over the edge.
yeah, it would cause mass panic, social unrest.
A complete breakdown of society.
So they chose to keep it quiet.
To protect us from ourselves, essentially.
Or so they say.
Or so they say.
Now, on top of the public panic angle,
Right.
there were probably national security concerns too, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, think about it.
think about it.
Alien technology.
Technology so advanced, it seems like magic to us.
Yeah, way beyond anything we had.
It would be a game changer.
So acknowledging that publicly would basically be admitting that the U.S.
It was vulnerable.
was totally outmatched,
That we were playing in the minor leagues.
and that's not something any superpower wants to do.
No, especially not during the Cold War.
So there's a strong argument to be made that they kept it quiet
At least for a while.
to try and figure out how to catch up,
Maybe even reverse engineer the alien tech.
you know, level the playing field.
Yeah, keep up with the Joneses, so to speak.
Or in this case, the
Extraterrestrial.
extraterrestrials. Yeah, there you go.
It's a whole new ballgame.
But okay, we've talked a lot about the arguments for cover-up,
We have.
but there's another side to this story.
There is.
The skeptics,
The doubters.
the people who say, hold on a minute,
Right.
what are their main counter-arguments?
Well, their main point is that Project Sign
Yeah,
was dealing with a deluge of reports.
right, we talked about that.
And most of those reports were probably just misidentifications
Okay,
of normal things, airplanes, weather balloons,
yeah,
stars.
people seeing what they wanted to see.
Exactly. Pareidolia, it's a real thing.
Right. Our brains love to find patterns,
They do,
even where they don't exist.
even when there's nothing there.
So the skeptics say Project Sign was just trying to make sense of all this noise,
Yeah, to sift through the clutter.
to apply some scientific rigor.
And to prevent mass hysteria.
Because if you tell people we don't know what this is,
That can be scary.
it can be very scary.
It can lead to chaos.
Exactly.
So better to say, well, we're looking into it,
yeah,
but we're pretty sure it's nothing to worry about.
right.
And the other big thing the skeptics point to is the lack of hard evidence.
Yeah, where's the proof?
Where's the spaceship in a hangar?
Exactly. Show me the alien bodies.
Right.
Decades of investigation.
Nothing concrete.
No smoking gun.
So they say Project Sign's termination wasn't some big conspiracy.
Right.
It was just a practical decision.
The data wasn't there
They looked into it and came up empty,
and moved on.
which is reasonable.
It's a valid point.
And what about the estimate of the situation document?
Ah, yes, the elusive report.
How do they address that?
Well, they say that even if it did exist,
Right.
and even if it did say that some UFOs were alien,
Yeah.
those conclusions were probably based on early interpretations of the data,
Okay.
preliminary findings that didn't hold up under further scrutiny.
So maybe they jumped the gun a little bit?
Maybe so. And the fact that it wasn't released doesn't automatically mean cover-up.
Right. It could just mean they didn't have enough to go on.
They didn't want to make a big announcement based on shaky evidence.
Exactly.
It's like in science, you don't publish your findings until you're sure.
Until you've done all the checks.
So it could have been an early line of inquiry.
Yeah.
That just didn't pan out.
Which happens all the time in science.
Right, we're always revising our understanding.
Based on new information.
So it sounds like the truth, as always,
As always.
probably lies somewhere in between these two extremes.
In the gray area.
The gray area.
Yeah. It's messy and uncertain.
But that's history for you.
It rarely gives us easy answers.
But it's interesting to think about, right?
It is.
Because maybe Project Sign did encounter some genuinely strange stuff
Yeah, but they did.
that they couldn't explain at the time.
Right.
And maybe the government decided to play it safe.
To err on the side of caution.
Not necessarily to lie,
But to manage the situation,
control the narrative,
keep things from spiraling out of control.
which, you can kind of understand.
I can see their point.
In a world that was already so volatile.
Yeah, a world on the brink.
So maybe they weren't covering up aliens per se,
Maybe not.
but they were trying to keep a lid on things
Yeah, to prevent panic,
until they had a better grasp of what they were dealing with.
which is a different kind of cover-up,
It is a kind of cover-up,
but with different motives.
right? Maybe they thought they were doing the right thing,
It's possible.
but it's still fascinating
Oh, it's incredibly fascinating.
because it shows how much we're drawn to these mysteries,
To the unknown.
to the possibility of something beyond ourselves.
To the idea that we're not alone.
And it also shows how suspicious we are of governments,
Right.
especially when it comes to the weird stuff.
Yeah, they haven't exactly earned our trust.
Especially with the weird stuff, right?
Especially with the weird stuff.
Like they're always hiding something.
Yeah. They're always up to something.
So I guess the question is, are they?
That is the question, isn't it?
I mean, that's what keeps us coming back to these stories.
It's the eternal question.
What's really going on?
What are they hiding from us?
And maybe, more importantly, why?
Yeah, what's the motivation?
What's the big picture?
What don't we know?
And that's what I love about Project Sign.
Me too.
It forces us to ask those questions,
Yeah.
to challenge our assumptions,
To be skeptical?
but also to be open-minded.
Right, to consider all the possibilities.
Because maybe, just maybe,
Yeah.
there's more to the universe than we currently understand.
Than we can even imagine.
And that's a pretty exciting thought.
It is, it's thrilling.
So here's something to think about.
All right, I'm ready.
Maybe the most important thing about Project Sign
Hmm.
isn't about figuring out what those objects were
Yeah,
back in 48.
okay.
Maybe it's about understanding how the very act of investigating them
Right.
changed us,
Changed how we see the world.
changed how we think about our place in the cosmos.
How we think about ourselves.
The questions they asked, the conclusions they reached,
Didn't reach.
the decisions they made,
It all had an impact.
it all shaped our understanding of reality
In subtle ways.
in ways we might not even fully realize,
It's like a ripple effect.
spreading out through time.
So think about that. What other historical events,
Hmm.
maybe less sensational than UFOs,
Yeah,
but still shrouded in mystery,
right.
might be shaping our world today?
In ways we don't even see.
It's food for thought, right?
It's fascinating.
It's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night.
I know the feeling.
And that's what we're all about here.
Yeah, exploring the unknown,
Digging deeper.
asking the tough question.
And hopefully expanding our understanding of the universe.
And ourselves.
Even if just a little bit.
Every little bit counts.
Absolutely.
It's a journey.
It's a journey, and we're all in this together.
That's right.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep looking up. And keep those questions coming.
Because the truth is out there.
Some